Hi everyone. One of the challenges that you're going to be facing over the next couple of weeks is learning how to set up a schedule for yourself. In a normal semester, you have a pretty rigid course structure where you go to classes every time that you have a lecture scheduled. Now you're moving towards this much more open-ended schedule where it might feel like you have a lot of free time. While this might seem liberating, one of the big challenges is learning how to appropriately schedule your time so that you're completing not only your lectures and short-term assignments, but also completing your long-term assignments like papers and projects without pushing them all back towards the deadline. As faculty members, we often face this exact same problem. We have a lot of short-term assignments like completing emails and preparing for our classes that we feel like we need to complete on this daily basis. And then we have longer term assignments like proposals and preparing papers that might not be due for a long time, but they often are more important or just as equally important for the success of our career as those shorter term assignments. So as faculty members, we have to learn how to properly schedule our work so that we can complete not only those short-term assignments as well as those long-term proposals and papers. So what I want to do with this video is hopefully set up a structure for you to be able to put together a schedule for yourself on a Sunday afternoon so that you can schedule all of your short-term assignments for the week, such as watching your lectures and completing your homework assignments, but also integrate in those longer-term projects such as papers and projects so that you're making sure you're completing all of them and working on all of them on a daily basis rather than procrastinating them and ending up with all of them at the end of your semester when you have everything due at the same time. These guidelines that I put together for creating your weekly schedule are based off of methods from the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity webinar called How to Align Your Time with Your Priorities. You can find this full webinar available online. To be able to create your weekly schedule, it's all going to start with a calendar. So you can choose any type of calendar that you might prefer. That could be a digital method such as an Outlook or Google Calendar, or something that's written on paper such as a weekly planner or a blank piece of paper. The first step in creating your weekly schedule is going to be inputting all of your recurring events. Any live class lectures that you need to attend, doctor's appointments, or workout videos that you want to do on a recurring basis should be input into your calendar so that you can account for those items as you're going through and creating your weekly schedule. You want to make sure that you're keeping your calendars current. So as you're going through the week and scheduling meetings with other groups or with faculty members, make sure that you're adding those meetings into your calendar so that they're always prepared for when you're creating your weekly schedule. Each Sunday afternoon, I want you to take your calendar and go through these guidelines to be able to create a plan for your week. The first thing that you're going to want to do is create your work categories. So this is something that you'll go through and divide all of your work items into all of these specific categories each Sunday afternoon. Before we went to this working online schedule, my work categories were separated into research and writing, teaching, service, and personal. Now that we've transitioned to this online work schedule, I've readapted my work categories to include class prep, video recording, research and writing, service, and personal. For a student working through this semester, you might want to think about dividing your work into categories such as lectures, homework, studying, projects and papers, group meetings, and personal. Once you've created your categories, the next thing that you're going to do is what we call the brain dump. So on a Sunday afternoon, you'll take about 10 to 15 minutes to write down everything that you can think of that you need to complete for the week. Each of these items will be categorized based on the categories that you've already established. And then you want to use your list from the prior week that you've created to be able to carry over any items that maybe you didn't complete or that are recurring from the previous week. So for me, the way that I go about doing my brain dump is I have a notebook that I put together where I categorize it week by week, and I have my categories written down. So I have research, writing, teaching, service, and personal. So what I do is I sit there and I go through each of my specific categories and I write down all of the tasks that I have to complete this week in each of those different categories. And you really want to take the time to think through all of the things that you have to complete across the whole week. Once you've gone through and written down your different items that you have to complete, you want to take everything off of this list and input it into your calendar. So this is the really important part that starts to get you to a schedule. So you're going to take every item that you have, you're going to evaluate it for how much time you think this task will take, and then you'll input it into your calendar on an appropriate day. In doing this, you want to be sure that you're scheduling in breaks and makeup time. For instance, having time to go for a walk, have a snack, catch up on emails, or even watch a TV show. This is going to be a very different schedule for you, so you want to make sure that you're giving yourself some freedom to be able to take a break as you're going through your schedule. So this is an example of what my calendar might look like after my Sunday afternoon scheduling. So you can see here, I've got every event that I wrote down on my piece of paper. I've now taken it and given it time within my calendar. So what this allows me to do is really think about how much time I'm putting towards each of these different items. And it also lets me lay it out across the week so that I can make sure that I have time for all of the things that I need to be completing for the week. So looking at this, all of my green colors are going to be related to my coursework, and then these blue items are just regularly scheduled events. I have specific service items, so a process safety meeting that I have, a meeting with my undergraduate students that are completing work in my lab, and then I also have my research categorized. So looking at this, I also have things that are personal scheduled into these meetings. So I have lunch meetings, I have coffee with different people to make sure that I have these little breaks integrated into my day. And then I also put my gym schedule on here because I want to make sure that I'm keeping myself accountable, not only for my work items, but also for those personal items that are helping me to stay happy and healthy. So this is another example of a schedule that you could put together. So this is one of my friends that I work with in holding me accountable for keeping my weekly schedule. So she goes through and writes out her calendar each week, and she can go through and categorize everything just like we did with these different colors. And she integrates things like personal events, so going to the botanical gardens, as well as things like naps. So it's really important to keep all of these things within your schedule so that you're making sure you're holding yourself accountable. So the next step is just live according to your schedule. So you want to use your schedule throughout the week to hold yourself accountable. So make sure that you're following that schedule, but you also want to be flexible and don't be too hard on yourself. So you have to be willing to be able to move some of the items on your calendar to different times, but you want to make sure that you're doing your best to try to hold yourself accountable to what you're scheduling. And then what you're going to do is the next Sunday, you're going to repeat the same process again so that each week you're coming up with this weekly work schedule. Strategies for helping you to stick through your schedule. One thing that you can do is reevaluate how you did the previous week. So for me, the way that I go about doing that is I'll look at my weekly schedule from the week before on that next Sunday, and I'll go through and cross off the items that I was able to complete, and I'll put a star next to items that I wasn't able to complete as I move them forward into my next week in the calendar. So for instance, I didn't do this meeting with Wendy, so that would get moved to the next week and I would put a star next to it. Another thing that I didn't complete was finalizing my ABET rubrics. That I had also moved over from the previous week, so I can identify this now as something that has been on my schedule for 2 weeks, and again, I've been putting it off. So that's something that allows you to identify which tasks that you're really just putting off and avoiding within your calendar. So one of the things that my colleague does is she creates a reality schedule. So in addition to having her weekly schedule that she sets up on Sunday, as she goes through her week, she creates her actual schedule so that she can compare what she was expecting to complete to what she actually ended up completing throughout the week. So this can be really beneficial to see which tasks are taking longer than expected, which tasks are getting put on the back burner, and really seeing how long it's taking you to complete your different tasks throughout the week. Other things that you should be doing to help you stick to your schedule, learn from your mistakes. So did it take you longer to complete something than expected? Did you end up putting something off, the same thing every week, and maybe it's you're almost at the deadline and you haven't worked on a specific task? Those are things that you should probably put priority to for the next week. Another thing that I do that is really helpful is having an accountability group. So I have a group that I have that every Sunday afternoon we send each other our schedules. That way we can make sure that we're holding each other accountable. If one of us doesn't complete our schedules, we check in to make sure that we're working on our schedule and we're putting everything together. So hopefully this is a good strategy that you can use to help to hold you accountable for keeping to a schedule throughout the week and helping you to keep track of all the new free time that you have that you need to be using to complete your homeworks and your lecture content.